Welcome back to Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. We're going to go right to the phones. We got Scott Braddock on the line. We've got Scott Braddock. How are things going there in Austin?
Going well, Matt. We're trying to figure out what the legislative session is going to look like. We've got a budget deficit. They're trying to figure out how they're even going to get together for a meeting during the pandemic. And the Republican caucus of the Texas House is going to meet this weekend to pick a new chairman. Lots going on.
Yeah. So, what is the hospital rate there in Austin? Any chance that y'all are going to be closing down anytime soon?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me. We're at stage 4 here, Austin, though.
Yeah.
Matt, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah, we're at stage 4 here, and so it's not looking great. The reason they go up to stage 4 is because they say they don't have enough hospital capacity because of staffing issues, not enough medical personnel.
Yeah.
And so, we, just like other parts of the state, seeing the effects of what is definitely a surge all around Texas and the country.
Yeah, it's and it kind of up here in West Texas, we've already been closed down to, I don't know, just the rollback that they have there, and I know that the rest of the state's slowly catching up with us, sadly.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, in Dallas-Fort Worth, that's where the real center of activity is right now when it comes to all of this. I was looking at numbers that were updated last night at about 6 p.m., and the hospital region, including Dallas-Fort Worth, they had reported their COVID-19 hospitalizations were up above that 15% threshold for a full week, for the 7th day in a row as of Thursday, which means that it is time, under the current executive orders from the governor, to roll back the indoor capacity for businesses, to shut some things down, shut bars down and things like that. The state was at 15.55%, the state said that they were at 15.55% of hospital beds in North Texas occupied by coronavirus patients. And you remember the governor had said that any of these regions that see their numbers go above and stay above 15% for their hospital capacity, that those would see automatic rollbacks under what he had already laid out. And, when the governor was asked about whether any further lockdowns, restrictions would be necessary, what did he say? Well, he said, if you look at my current orders, they already call for that to happen if these thresholds are met, and that's what's happening.
Yeah. So I guess the governor hasn't said anything else at all about any of this? There's nothing that he's saying he's going to do at this point?
Yeah, there was a spokesperson for Governor Abbott who said yesterday that those mitigation protocols work, and, of course, talking about capping the occupancy on businesses and also, the requirements that people wear masks and things like that. But the full quote from the spokesman for Abbott was, the protocols work, but only if they are enforced. And you remember Governor Abbott had suggested that some local authorities were not fully enforcing his COVID-19 orders, and that's something that the governor has sort of said a few times, although I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about, because when you look around the state, the places that have seen the surges and the places that have had the problems are those areas, Matt, where, as you know, the local authorities have wanted to go further than what the governor had laid out under his orders. I mean, in Dallas County, the county judge there, Clay Jenkins, who's a liberal Democrat, had, taken some criticism of his own earlier in the year, because he was one of those who was very quick to try to shut down businesses, make people wear masks, do all that sort of stuff at a time when a lot of people were not really accepting of that. And some of the anger by folks in the area was directed at the local government because they wanted to go even further in imposing restrictions on people.
Well, and I mean, just to be completely honest, I don't know whether the governor is right or wrong, but just to be completely honest, looking at the numbers, they don't slow down whenever these new restrictions come up. I mean, here in Lubbock and Lubbock and Amarillo, both of our hospital districts have been continued to go up, and I think they've hit about 30%, and they've been kind of hanging out there. But the restrictions, once you hit 15, didn't really stop anything. It just kind of leveled out at about 30%.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about all this, and whether the restrictions are doing what they need to be doing. and accomplishing what they need to be accomplishing. What I've heard from a lot of public health experts is that these the mechanisms, the way that the governor has laid it out, is acting when it's too late to get a hold on it, to get a handle on it. When you say that you're going to wait until the numbers reach 15% to put other restrictions in place, then at that point, because the disease grows and spreads exponentially, whenever you do have an outbreak of it, it's not the case that you can just go and say, okay, we're going to go back to half capacity or whatever, and that's going to do some job of holding back what really is a tide of coronavirus at that point. And so, if anything, I would think most of those public health folks would say that they're not doing enough.
So, Scott, I know that this wasn't something that we brought up, but it was a question that kind of came into my head as we were talking.
Yep.
We've got the Supreme Court looking at whether or not you can count illegal aliens in the census. I personally think they're going to say that you're going to have to. I don't see anything in the Constitution that says that you have to be a legal citizen to be counted in the census. But overall, if they decide that that they have to count everybody, are we going to have to do a new census, and how's that going to affect the state of Texas?
Great question. I know that the Biden administration is taking a look at that. There's a lot of chatter out of Washington, and I've heard from some of my sources back east, that that is exactly what the incoming administration would like to do. We don't have anything definitive on that, but that the Trump administration rushed things during a pandemic and has taken the position that, as you said, that undocumented people should not be counted, and of course the courts are looking at that. The courts did, of course, as you know, take sort of a skeptical view of what the Trump administration had laid out, because, as you said, the U.S. Constitution just doesn't say that only citizens are counted. It says, that the people who are in those areas are counted. And to not count undocumented people in Texas, it's just the case that we would be, cutting off our nose to spite our face with a deal like that if people around here support it, because we do have those folks here, and we would be missing out on not only the federal resources that we're entitled to, because we are a donor state. We're one of those states that sends more money to Washington than we get back on a whole host of things, including transportation, education, et cetera, but also the fact that it would mean that it would upend the amount of representation that we potentially get in Washington. And so, that also has implications, Matt, for what happens with the legislature next year. As you know, it's a redistricting year, and in redistricting, the whole idea is allocation of power. And no matter what anybody thinks about, the specific question of whether undocumented people ought to be counted, all of this could end up creating a problem with the timeline for how that gets done. It's already the case that we probably won't have census numbers back in time for the legislature to do the redistricting process during the regular legislative session, starting in the first 5 months of the year in 2021. So it could be that you see a special session later in the year, or potentially into the year after that if it takes that long for the census numbers to come back. One way that one person put it is, you could potentially hear the sound of billions of dollars blowing out the window come January if President-elect and then President Biden decides that he wants to go back and get another bite at the apple on the census, because it's a huge undertaking, and they do want to make sure that it's done right.
But if it gets pushed to 2022, then it's a big gamble for the Democrats, because it could end up being that the Republicans get more power in 2022, even at the state level across the United States. It could end up being harming them as far as gerrymandering.
Well, we do know that the maps that are in place right now still held firm for Republicans in most places around the country when it comes to state legislatures and congressional maps as well. One of the great ironies of this election, as you know, is that while at the top of the ticket you have President Trump still arguing that there was some massive fraud, that he was cheated in the election, that there were all these illegal ballots cast. To believe that, you would have to believe that all of those illegal ballots also included lots of votes for Republicans down ballot, including here in Texas, where President Trump finished ahead of Joe Biden by about 6 points, but Senator Cornyn and other statewide Republicans all beat their opponents by about 10 points, right? And the Republicans in the state legislature and in Congress from Texas did very well down ballot. So you'd have to believe that somehow only the votes at the top of the ticket were fraudulent.
So one of the things that was brought up was Mayor Adler. I know that Mayor Adler, in my opinion, made a huge mistake with timing. He could have waited just a week and been back in Austin. But tell us a little bit about what happened and what kind of response he's getting there in Austin.
Pretty unbelievable. You have Mayor Steve Adler, who at the time, this was about a month ago, he had been telling people to stay home if you can, because we're entering another surge of coronavirus, which of course is true. It wasn't even, Matt, that he said it at his house and then got on a plane and went to Mexico. He was in Mexico when he was saying that.
Right.
They had a wedding for his daughter. He said included about 20 people that they originally, of course, had planned to have a big wedding, and they had to cancel that, like a lot of folks have had to do because of this pandemic. They scaled it back. They had a smaller, celebration with 20 people, and those 20 people got on a plane to Cabo. And the mayor has been trying to clean up this mess ever since it was first reported by KFYO television, and the Austin American-Statesman They did some really good reporting on this, and they found out that the mayor simply was. It's no other way to say it. He was just being hypocritical and telling people that he was saying it's no time to relax, it's no time to take it easy, that we all need to take this very seriously and stay home if you can. It's pretty close to a direct quote. Meantime, he was not doing that at all. And then he issued a weird apology, you might have seen on Facebook, where he said that he understood that the words he was using and his actions were confusing to people. I don't think people are confused. I think they can see exactly what happened, and they're not happy about it.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is that, Austin's very liberal and seems to stand behind him, but they're not very happy with him right now.
Most of the time it seems like they do, although I would say that the nuance I've noticed in Austin politics over the last few days after the story came out, Matt, is that a lot of people will sometimes just kind of privately tell you that they can't defend Mayor Adler or some of the stuff that he does. More of those people were publicly saying they could not defend what he was doing with this.
All right. Well, we're pretty much out of time. What's going on the on the Quorum Report right now?
One thing we're going to look at, a real insider's deal this weekend. The House Republican Caucus of the Texas House, they're going to pick their new leader. We're hearing that Jim Murphy is a state representative from Houston, who we're hearing that he's running, as well as Representative Matt Krause from Fort Worth, a more conservative sort of Tea Party style guy, running to be the leader of the Republicans in the House. And whoever they pick, I think, will help to shape what the agenda is for the Republican caucus going into the session. So we'll check it out for you. We'll report back at quorumreport.com.
All right. Well, Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to talk to you. We'll talk to you again here in a week.
Thanks, Matt. Talk soon.
All right. This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We'll be right back.